G'day everybody, Matt Ellis with you for the latest edition of the Cricket Library podcast, and today we get to hear the tale of a man who played first-class cricket at WA and Tasmania before moving into a role in coaching where he's worked with some of the best players around the world in both the men's and women's game. He'll give us some insights into his cricketing journey so far, his philosophy of coaching, and what he thinks the secret is behind the success at Western Australia in recent times. It's time to sit back, relax, and enjoy the Tim McDonald story on the Cricket Library podcast. A very warm welcome to the Cricket Library podcast. Tim McDonald, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I really like to find out the origins of people's passions for cricket, and you've been involved in cricket a very long time, but the seed must have been planted somewhere. Can we start out by getting a little bit of a background into where the fire was lit for you?
Oh, yeah, it's taking me back a fair way here, Matt. But I think my first real foray into cricket was on an indoor cricket court at a quite a young age, maybe 7 or 8 years of age. I didn't really grow up in a cricketing family, and I didn't play, the low young levels of cricket that you can play these days. And I suppose I played a bit of t-ball, but my first love for cricket, I suppose, was born on the indoor cricket court inside the net. So yeah, that was really my first memories of playing cricket, and then taking that home and kind of bowling by myself or batting by myself in the backyard to learn the game a bit more.
So no brothers or sisters to pester for a game of backyard cricket?
I have an older sister who's although has been quite supportive over the years, is not a massive fan of cricket. So no, she was pursuing her own loves and didn't really have any interest in a young, annoying brother who was kicking around the house.
So when does that early love of the game, playing indoor cricket, when do you decide to get into junior club cricket, and when do you figure out you've got some skill and talent to work with there?
Oh, I suppose that was quite a long journey for me. I then ended up playing, some outdoor cricket when I hit about 11 or 12 years of age, and came across a group of guys that I got on really well with, and we really enjoyed playing together and enjoyed the game. And we came up through the community junior levels playing together, and I suppose I probably showed that I had a little bit of something, and made a few of the district sides along the way as well. But cricket for me, during my teenage years and into my early 20s was really just about the people I played with and how much we enjoyed it, and enjoyed it on the field, and then as teenage years and early 20s went on, enjoyed it off the field. Have an inkling or a knowledge of what it was, what I needed to do to play at a professional level. I was chosen to represent any of the underage sides for Western Australia over here. So yeah, it was really an outlet for me. It was really where I met most of my good friends today, and where I could have some good fun on the training track and on weekends.
And were you working at the time, like in your early 20s? Were you working? Were you at uni? What was going on outside of playing cricket on a Saturday?
Bits of both. I was studying at university, in my late teens, while starting to play up the grades, I suppose for my district club as well. So yeah, there was a little bit of work, and I think I ended up playing a couple of first grade games when I was about 17 or 18 for my club side, Claremont Nedlands. That didn't go that well. But yeah, I sort of the year after, I think when I was 18 turning 19, I had quite a good first season in full season in first grade for Claremont Nedlands. So things kind of kicked on a little bit from there.
Yeah, and a big season 2005-06, a mountain of wickets. in club cricket. How do you sort of find out that there's interest from the WACA to join the state squad?
Well, yeah, I suppose as I said, I still didn't really know what it what it took to be a professional cricketer, to be a first class cricketer, but I'd strung sort of 3 or 4 really good seasons together for Claremont, where I'd taken a lot of wickets 3 or 4 years in a row, and people start talking and saying you should give this a crack. I still didn't really know what that looked like. But eventually, I suppose through weight of wickets, I was picked in a second 11 game before I had a contract, and did reasonably well in that. And yeah, was invited down to pre-season training the next year, and got a bit of a a shock on how professional athletes actually train. So it was that I suppose that's where the professional side of cricket really started for me.
Yeah, a bit of a culture shock from, like, what were some of the differences you picked up on from a training perspective?
Oh, I suppose the first learning for me was about time. If it's an 8 o'clock session in the morning, you don't arrive at 2 minutes to 8. I suppose everyone's sort of ready to go. I was still pretty young and had been fairly sheltered in my life, but I think just how hard physically to train. I was probably I had the skill to bowl the balls I was bowling in club cricket, but I never really knew a high level of fitness. So I suppose the pre-season is where most of that work happens, and the first year, the early morning bike sessions and boxing sessions and running sessions, I actually really did enjoy them, and I grew to enjoy them even more and more as we went along. But they were a bit of a shock when I first started doing them full time for a job.
Yeah, absolutely, and you get to play your first class game against New South Wales. I was just looking back at the scorecard from this game, and there's something like 9 of the 11 New South Wales players had played Test cricket, and probably half of the WA side had played Test cricket as well. What's the emotion like coming into an environment like that?
Yeah, look, it was a bit of a last minute call up as well. We'd played a second 11 game over here in Perth on the Monday through to the supposed to be the Thursday, and I think we'd beaten Victoria early on the 4th day, and I'd taken a few wickets, and I think Brett Dorey, West Australian quick big outswing bowler, had gone down with a calf injury in their one-day game on the Wednesday. And so, before we took the field on the last day of the second 11 game, I got a phone call to fly over to Sydney to cover for that injury. So it was I'd kind of played 4 or 5 days cricket with club cricket as well in a row, and then hopped on a plane Thursday, and not expecting to play. I suppose I was expecting to maybe be 12th man, and got the call to play my first Shield game on the Friday. Thankfully, we actually batted first, but it was quite daunting. I'd never been to the SCG before, and you're walking into the most historic sort of cricket ground in the country, and you've got all this. I'm a massive cricket nuffy and cricket tragic, and always felt that I was sort of how much I was enjoying just being part of an environment and being around all these sort of guys who I'd watch play cricket. But you walk into the SCG and it's next level with all the memorabilia and the history, and that was daunting enough in itself. But yeah, as you said, the New South Wales sides of that era were always full of Australian players. The baggy blue was the baggy green as well, and it was quite daunting for me.
And you mentioned you batted first. You spend close to 2 hours at the crease. Were you just loving every minute of being out there on the SCG? Your job in the team is to take wickets, but getting to spend time in the middle and soak it in?
Yeah, look, the first probably half hour weren't as enjoyable as you'd think. I think it might have been Brad Haddon was keeping at the time, but there was a lot of chat. Stuart McGill bowled me my first ball in first class cricket, and he was turning at about 3 foot, and I'd never seen anything like it, and they were telling me all about it as well. But no, it was great. I think I walked out to the middle, and actually my current boss and head coach Adam Voges was out in the middle, and he sort of talked me through it a bit, and I think he ended up with 100 that day as well. So it was good to spend some time out in the middle of him. I didn't do a lot of scoring, but thankfully he did, and it was a bit of fun. It was a big challenge. I didn't really have a lot of shots as a batsman, but surviving for Adam became the key amongst a verbal barrage from the New South Wales players.
Yeah, he made 140 odd not in that game, and then you have to bowl to Simon Katich at the peak of his powers. Talk us through your mindset going in and bowling at that level for the first time.
Yeah, I suppose I still have memories of what I class as nerves. I'd never had nerves bowling a cricket ball, but I can't really remember the first over or two at all. And luckily I had some really senior experienced players, Marcus North, Adam Voges, Chris Rogers, these guys who could, Steve McGoffin, who could run up and sort of say, mate, just chill out a bit and have some fun. But yeah, it's hard to remember the first couple of overs, but I do remember it being very strange what Simon Katich did with his stance and his setup, and I do remember how flat the wicket was, which wasn't like what club cricket is like in Perth. And I do remember how hard it was to actually take a wicket, which I didn't actually end up doing at all in that first game. So, they're my major memories of bowling my first game of first-class cricket.
And you get a taste of T20 cricket that season at WA, but at the end of the season, you decide to move down to Tasmania. Can you talk through a little bit about the reason to head down to Tassie and how challenging was it to move away from your family and your friends?
Yeah, sure. We actually, my wife and I actually got married at the end of that season as well, and WA had offered a contract, and it was sitting there ready for when we got back from our honeymoon to sign and move on again and try it all again. I suppose, I'd had 4, 5, 6 years of performing in club cricket over here, but, I suppose really only 12 months of the hard fitness work. So I had a bit of a name over here, I suppose, for maybe being a really good bowler who probably wasn't quite in the shape they needed to be. And I felt that was going to be hard to shake. I was happy to do the work. Tasmania called when we returned from our honeymoon, and everything they said was just really positive. They just won a shield. They still wanted me down there, and they liked what they saw in a couple of second 11 games that I'd played against them. And they had an ageing attack and quite a few injuries around. And they thought I'd be a really good fit. I suppose it was great to hear such positivity, and we just decided as a newly married couple that why not? We'd take the plunge and headed over there, and it was awesome. It was a great experience for all of us.
Had your wife grown up in WA as well?
Yeah, she was a Perth girl, and she was a PE teacher from Perth, and she was all on board with it. She thought it was a really exciting opportunity, and we moved to Hobart not long after that, and we spent 5 years down there, met some really beautiful people, and had some really great experiences.
You have some on-field success as well with Tassie. One highlight that stands out for me, and feel free to share others, the six-for against South Australia, and some big wickets in there. Michael Klinger, Callum Ferguson and Yunus Khan in amongst the six. What do you remember about how you bowled that day?
I suppose that was probably one of the very few days in my first-class career where everything kind of clicked. I do remember the ball to get Yunus Khan out was I still remember it as probably the best ball I've ever bowled, and that that's probably one of the fondest memories I've got of taking a wicket in first class cricket. But they had a pretty good lineup as well, the South Australians, and we had a good win, which was great.
Yeah, and knowing that your best is good enough to get the best out, does that help your mindset going into future games?
Yeah, it definitely does. I suppose that was a battle I always had with myself as someone who had been a club cricketer for so long, and had I suppose settled to play the game for fun. Knowing that you're good enough is always, or not knowing that you're good enough is always something that sits in the back of your mind and maybe holds you back a little bit. But it had been a few years or a few games, and it had taken, I think, almost 10 games for that to happen over a long period of time. I'd had some injury issues when I first went to Tassie, and then broke onto the field and taken few wickets here and there, but never had the major breakthrough. So I suppose getting a fifer is it's something you can look back on and say there were times where maybe I was good enough.
Yeah, and you get to play against Sri Lanka for Tasmania, and the thing I wanted to ask you about you here, Sanath Jayasuriya retires hurt. You're the bowler. As a bowler, when you're bowling at that level and someone gets injured, how does that affect your mindset and the way you approach your bowling? Is that something that you've just sort of got to put out of your mind, or is it something that, as a fast bowler, you're trying to do a job, and if you can shorten someone up, then you've probably done your job? What are the reflections on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We played, I think it was a list A game. We played a 50-over game against Sri Lanka at Melreeve Oval in Hobart, and it was, I think, one of their only, or probably their only warm-up game for the summer when they'd come over, and they had a full-strength side on the park. And I remember bowling to Sanath. He was at the height of his powers, and he was absolutely crunching us and hitting the ball hard. Quite a few of them going straight to fielders, and I remember George Bailey saying, mate, you need to stop bowling half volleys here because you're going to break someone's hand in the cover region. I thought, okay, well, I'll bounce him. And he goes, yeah, go on. That's better than what you've been dishing up. So I bounced him. It was still in the days where Sanath used to wear the helmet but no grill. He had the earpieces in, and he played a pull shot. Probably played 3 or 4 pull shots, and had time to play a fifth, and then he'd actually hit him in the jaw. And I think it was probably a week or so before their first test, and he went down, and there was a bit of blood. And I suppose it's never a great feeling. It's probably a worse feeling post the Phil Hughes incident as well. But none of us had really experienced anything like that yet, so. It was an interesting one. He went off the field, and he came back to the ground later on, and I went over and had a chat with him, and I said, Sanath, you okay? And he said, yeah, and he had 12 stitches in his chin, and he seemed all right, and he was with it. And I said, what happened there, mate? You were absolutely crunching him, and he said, very good ball, very good slow ball. You did me. So, yeah, thanks for that, Sanath. So, yeah.
So did you invent the slower ball bouncer?
It seems like it. If you speak to Sanath Jayasuriya, definitely.
Now, there's some really big names that you would have played with, both at the WACA and down in Tassie. Who have been your key influences as a player, and blokes that you just loved turning up to play with?
Yeah, I suppose down in Tassie was, it was a great environment to come into. They were used to sort of housing people from, a lot of other states, and how welcoming they were to you and your family was unbelievable. And I'm sure they're still like that. They do rely a lot on imports as as a program and as an organisation, but they were absolutely brilliant for me. You know, guys like Tim Payne was pretty young at the time, but you know, he was great to play with, great to hang out with off the field as well. Travis Burt, who I'm still very good friends with, who works with us here at the Wacker, and you know, Brett Jeeves and those sort of guys. Everyone was really welcoming, and they played the game hard. They were really well planned. They trained hard. They had a great senior group who knew how to win down there. So it was a really good learning experience for me. You know, I wasn't always in the team, but I was always around, you know, some very good cricketers who had some good knowledge to impart.
Yeah, absolutely. Travis Burt could hit a long ball. He hit some big ones over the years.
Yeah, I think he still could. He's coaching in our academy program down here now, so hopefully he's teaching a few more youngsters how to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, a transition into coaching, at what point do you start to get an inkling that you could be good at it? And how does that transition occur?
Yeah, I never had any interest or inkling that, coaching was going to be for me, Matt. I lost my contract with Tasmania in 2011, and we moved back to Perth, and I moved back to my old club, Claremont, and took on captaincy there, and was just keen to, you know, play my last, while I could still walk, few years cricket with my mates and with the club that had helped me so much over my journey. And I think we lost the grand final in maybe 2014, and I was sort of tossing up whether to keep going, and the club said to me, well, we want you to coach. I hadn't even thought about it before that. I'd sat on, you know, the interviews and the meetings you have with prospective coaches, and, you know, we discussed it afterwards, and they kind of surprised me with it. And I said, well, if I'm going to coach, I'm not going to play, and we'll do this properly, and had a crack, and just really loved it. The grounding in club cricket that you get as a coach is unbelievable. You're pretty much you're doing everything from, you know, selling beers behind the bar to cleaning out storerooms to running fielding, training to, you know, working all through the grades and with the juniors as well. And you just learn so much about, you know, how all the different parts work together in a club. So that's probably how the love for coaching started, and it started at the club where, you know, my professionalism as a cricketer had started as well. So yeah, it really just built from there. I was working as well in business with my dad at the time, and I suppose over the years more time went into planning and attending cricket training sessions and cricket games than did, you know, on business. And yeah, it was my outlet. It was my real love while I was working as well. And I just started to have a real hunger to be back in a dressing room, professional dressing room in some capacity. And I suppose now with what I'm doing, that's really filled that void. And when you speak to a lot of coaches, you think you're on your own with that, but a lot of guys, one of their major motivations for being a coach after they've played is to be back in that high performance environment and just witness it and be a part of it and see, you know, what goes on through the highs and the lows.
Yeah, and there certainly are a lot of highs and lows along the way. And I guess having experienced some of those as a player helps give a bit of context to what the next crop of players are going through. Yeah,
definitely. And, you know, I haven't had as many experiences as most of the guys I'm coaching, but, you know, you sort of build this bank, don't you, over the years of being a part of conversations and observing what guys are going through, and you start to see patterns and guys going through same things that you've witnessed or been through yourself before, and you can kind of offer some guidance, or you can kind of know what they're needing from you. So yeah, that's definitely one of the bonuses of playing the game. Even though I didn't play a hell of a lot at first class level, it's one of the bonuses that you have had some of those experiences to draw on, even when you're just trying to help someone through a situation.
Yeah, for sure. And what was your first, I guess, professional coaching appointment? Like you you're obviously doing your club stuff and you're loving that. When do you get the tap on the shoulder, or do you instigate your first professional opportunity?
No, definitely not. I coached the club side Claremont Netherlands for 3 years, and at the end of that third year, we were expecting our second child, and I suppose it had consumed a lot of my life, and cricket had consumed a lot of my life and my wife and family's life as well. And my wife just had sort of said to me a few weeks earlier, you know, do you think it'd be great if you we're expecting our second child, if you maybe had a season or two off cricket and we could, you know, see what weekends are like in summer again. And I tended to agree with her, so I pulled the pin from coaching at the end of that season, and you know, to concentrate on the family life. And I think it was probably less than 6 weeks later that my wife then said to me, "You're annoying. You need to get out of the house. You need to go and find something to do." And it lined up really nicely with a phone call from Lisa Kitely, who was running the women's program, was running the WA women's and Scorchers team down at the Wacker.
Yeah, and working with Lisa, tell us about that. She's a Mudgee girl from Central West New South Wales. She's got a grandstand named after her down there in Mudgee. I'd say probably one of the first female cricketers to have a grandstand named after them. Anyway, that's a side point. Probably just one for the cricket nuffies. But you get to spend some time working with the women's program. Tell us what you learnt through that experience.
Oh, a hell of a lot. Yeah, I came on board initially. I think Lisa's way of getting me in the door was she said, "I've got a couple of fast bowlers that I wouldn't mind you having a look at, you know, a few hours a week here and there," which was how it began. And I suppose the sort of person I am, once I was in here and working with those bowlers, I couldn't actually just do those couple of hours. I ended up being at every session and you know, then at all their games, and then quite early on in the first season, and I was on every away trip as well. So it was a professional coaching position, but you know, I was very much still working full time and trying to fit this in and around it at the business. But yeah, it was really my first taste of getting back into that professional environment, that type of environment, and yeah, it really assured me straight away, even though it took probably 3 or 4 years to come about, that coaching was actually what I wanted to do in this part of my life. And Lisa was amazing with that. She, you know, we've worked a lot together now over the last 6 years, and you know, we've spent a lot of time together around the world and in bubbles and in hotel rooms and on planes and stuff like that. So we know each other really well. But I think you know, the biggest thing she gave me, especially in those early days, is the freedom to do things the way I wanted to do it. She was definitely not you know, micromanaging or anything like that. She was really keen. You know, she uses the excuse that she doesn't know anything about fast bowling, but she does, and yeah, she just let me go about my business, and which was great. And I learned a heap. I learned a heap off the players and her and the other coaching staff as well.
And that time working with the England women's cricket team and being in those bubbles in the UK, how is that from a family perspective? Did you have time away from your family to be able to do that?
Yeah, my wife and children stayed in Perth the whole time. Obviously, when I took the job with England, it was at the start of 2020. Initially, it was a 3-month little contract, which turned into a full-time role, and then COVID hit. So it wasn't exactly you know, how we planned things. We knew that there'd be, you know, weeks apart on end before we could meet up. The idea was, you know, so the kids and my wife could experience the world while we were travelling around, and we'd be back and forth on planes and things like that. But obviously COVID put a pretty abrupt end to that. So it was difficult. We the first year, I think we did 7.5 months apart, and it was, you know, just by chance and luck that we actually were able to get a flight home and sit in a hotel room for 14 days just to see the family for a week or so. And then the second year, I think, was even longer than that. There was a stretch of probably 10 months where I hadn't seen my house or my dog, but we'd been able to get the family over to Sydney during the women's Ashes, which was great. But yeah, it was a strange time, difficult time, I suppose. I'd always been someone who wanted to be in and amongst and around people. I crave company of other people, but I really learned how to be alone with myself and a lot. Did seven stints in hotel quarantine over that time, so you learn to like your own company, and you can, I suppose, really use that time for self-reflection and a lot of learning, a lot of reading, a lot of listening to podcasts and things like that. So there was, even though it was really, really tough times, there was some good things to come out of that. Some really good friendships come out of the stint with England, the 2.5 years there. You're spending a lot of time inside bubbles with other staff and the players. I think at one stage we were locked inside the Derbyshire Cricket Ground for 12 weeks where we couldn't leave to play a series, to train and then play a series. So, look, mentally there's probably, some difficulties, and a lot of people struggled and are still struggling with some of the things that happened there. But, there was some positives to come out of it, definitely.
You talk about that time to reflect. In that time of reflection, did you able to look back and think about how your personal coaching philosophy has evolved? I mean, you've worked in club cricket, you've spent some time with the Australian women's cricket team, some time with the English women's team, and in the work that you're doing now with the Western Australian men's teams. How has that philosophy evolved as you've developed through your career? Yeah,
it's a very good question. I think the time with the women's team definitely changed my philosophy and my outlook, especially on game day. I think sometimes in a male environment, when games are tight and emotions are flowing, people can get pretty animated and excited, but it's not something that female athletes in general like seeing, and you can really change environments for the worse if you are animated and emotional, especially around game day and training. And training for certainly the women's sides I've worked with has been mostly based on fun, and the fun is what motivates the hard work. With the male sides, the competitive spirit and things like that seems to be a much higher motivator. But I think just an empathy for the athletes, whether that was born about through the COVID times or spending more time with female athletes. I think more empathy and more trying to understand each individual and where they're at and how that affects how they need to tackle the problems that are ahead of them is probably, I suppose, how my coaching philosophy has evolved. Less from what used to be probably more a direct style as a captain who then went on to coach the club that I'd always played for, and then more as a standing alongside an athlete and looking at what's ahead and how do we go on this journey together, and how do we solve this problem, and how can I help, and how do we try and build you the tools that next time this arises, that you've got options ahead of you to help solve those problems.
Yeah, that's a really interesting reflection there. I know we're similar ages, and I know when I was growing up playing cricket, it was a lot of direct instruction, a lot of being told what you need to go and do, and not a lot of collaboration there, and more I guess a one size fits all kind of approach, that if it works for one, it should work for all. But athletes are all unique individual human beings, and they're going to have different drivers, and that's probably the hardest thing to work out is what each athlete needs at any given time, because on one day they might need something and another day they might need something else.
That's exactly right, and I think there's there's a Bruce Lee quotes about a man never stands in the same river twice. It's different. I don't believe in the one size fits all, especially when it comes to the coaching of bowlers and fast bowlers, and everyone comes with their own unique skill set, their own movement patterns, and their own strengths and weaknesses, and they can actually, if we're going with a one size fits all approach to how to bowl a cricket ball, you can actually be inhibiting some of those strengths. So I think we've got to look at and work with each athlete completely separately, and to do that, you've got to be able to get to know them first, how they move, how they think, what's going on in their lives as well. So I suppose that's where I'm at the moment with my coaching philosophies, and it's definitely a team approach, a side by side approach to coaching.
Yeah, absolutely. And the on-field success at the WACA are probably the envy of Australian cricket at the moment. A wonderful period in Western Australian cricket with what you've been able to achieve in both the men's and women's programs in recent times. From your perspective, as someone who's entrenched in Western Australian cricket culture, what are the key ingredients? What are the things that you think are contributing to that on-field success?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I've, in a way, kind of parachuted in. I joined back up in August last year, so I only had one season inside this environment, which has clearly been a very successful environment. But I have had that time to reflect on that. People ask me that question a lot, and I think basically the two main answers I give are people and planning. It's two of the biggest strengths of our current setup. The people that are here and how those people are valued and looked after. And, when new people come into the organisation, it's definitely more about who they are as a person rather than, what they've done in the past and how they fit as a person into this organisation. Which is great to see, led from at the top by Christina Matthews and Kate Harvey and Adam Voges as well. And, it's a people first approach to build the environment, but obviously that's happened over a very long period of time. And we're lucky enough to be in a bit of a purple patch where, we've got enough players at the right age who have played a hell of a lot of cricket, and they're all just really keen to stay together and continue to have success for WA. They love playing together. They're all really good mates. They love, teaching the younger guys that come in, how to not only be cricketers, but how to behave and how to be really good people. So the people side of it is huge. And then the other one I mentioned was the planning. I've not seen, during COVID, planning had to be really, really thorough, but I've not seen an organisation who plans forward so well. And I guess when you're successful, you could easily just say, well, that worked last year, we'll do it again. It's definitely not like that here. We're definitely picking apart not only the parts that we want to do better next year, but also look, how do we have the year we're having this year in 5 years' time, and what are the pieces of the puzzle to make sure that we can sustain this success. Every team has a life cycle, and generally after some good success, the life cycle turns, and you may have to build again because you're dealing with salary caps and you're dealing with players moving up to international games. So you do tend to lose players very quickly when you've had success. So how do we plan to limit that and keep this part of this team's life cycle running for as long as we can?
Is it a real satisfying thing for you when players do get called up for higher honours? Is that one of the key markers of success? Along with obviously winning the Big Bash and winning the Sheffield Shield, they're big ticks. But when you see young guys getting touted and selected in Australian squads, is that something that really excites the coaching group?
Absolutely, that's our number one driver at the moment. I remember when I sat down with Adam and and Kate Harvey before. I came on board and I said, look, you've won all three competitions. What are we looking forward to? What's driving us for next year? And it was definitely the number one thing is Australian representation and getting some of these guys who have played so well for so long. We're getting guys picked in squads. There's a lot of West Australians in white ball squads, T20 squads and 50 over squads as well. But we've only got one player in the test team. It'd be massive for us to have a second West Australian take the field with Cam Green in our test side. That's one of our biggest driving factors. And I suppose the last field game we played before the Big Bash, we played at the Gabba. And we came off the field on the last day with a draw. But Lance Morris had nearly bowled us to victory. And he received a phone call pretty much as we were coming off the field to say that he'd been included in the test squad. And being in that change rooms where, there was 12 other guys jumping on top of him and celebrating the fact that it happened, it's definitely a collective who have that goal. The whole organisation is pushing towards that. So, yeah, that's definitely our number one goal.
Yeah, that's outstanding. And your personal hopes for the future? What does Tim McDonald have written down in the goal sheet or the journal as you dream big and think big for the future? What do you see yourself doing?
Yeah, good question. I wouldn't mind staying in coaching for a while yet. I've really enjoyed experiencing a whole heap of different environments, and I think coaching's sort of changing in a way that we can now go and experience other environments while I'm still working for the WACA, but I might be able to go and experience another environment and learn some more from that. So immediate goals are to try and sort of continue my learning here in what is, probably one of the most successful environments in Australian cricket for a very long time. But also, how can I continue to learn and grow and get ideas from other environments, because I think that's what shapes me to where I am now is the different environments I've been lucky enough to witness and experience, and I want to keep doing that. And I suppose one day I do have an ambition to coach my own team. I don't know whether that would be, in a full-time role or a franchise role or something like that. But I'd really love to learn enough and experience enough and work towards that. But that's at the moment we're just about gearing up for another season. So all of your energies over the next couple of weeks as the players start filtering back in, will be going into that.
Yeah, for sure. And before we let you go, Tim, it's been great chatting with you, and I love your passion for the game and your passion for coaching. Our favourite question for our guests is, if you could invite any three people to the cricket nets, who would you choose and why would you choose them? It doesn't have to be cricketers, could be anyone you like, but who's on your list for a dream net session?
Dream net session. Well, I suppose the first one is definitely not a cricketer, but probably flavour of the month in the coaching world and in the TV world at the moment is Ted Lasso. I just love. I'd love to meet a person or a coach who was like Ted Lasso with that much energy and that much passion. And I think you would not have a boring net session. It'd be quite entertaining. It'd be upbeat. So he'd be my number one, just to drive the mood and the feeling at the session. I'd have quite a few questions I'd like to ask him as well if he was a real person. The great Shane Warne I'd love to see. I'd love to just hear the fizz of the ball out of his hand and just ask questions and pick his brains on cricket, as we've had such a good cricket brain. So he'd definitely be another one I'd have in there. I'm kind of a bit stuck for anyone past that. I think my excuse for that being that I get to share the nets with some pretty impressive people most days, and I enjoy spending time with all of them. But those two there would form the basis of a net session for me. with any other number of people to join after that.
Yeah, well, an open ticket for that third one. That's really interesting. Warnie, I think Warnie would just be unbelievable to hear the ball out of his hand. Did you ever get to play against Shane?
No, I never played against Shane. Would love to have. As I said, massive cricket nuffy, so I'm not sure how well that would have gone. I probably would have just been watching him the whole time. But I didn't get the pleasure or honour of playing against Shane, but I've pretty much seen most of the balls he's bowled in his career, so on TV, so it's pretty close.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to join us on the Cricket Library podcast, Tim. I really enjoy stories like yours and getting to hear just the way cricket can take you in all sorts of different directions in life and the different experiences that the game provides. And that can be if you are a Shane Warne or if you're at any level of the game, cricket does provide so many opportunities and so many long-lasting friendships and relationships. So we wish you all the best with the season ahead at the Wacker, and really looking forward to seeing how your career progresses in the coming years.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
A massive thanks to Tim McDonald for sharing his story on this edition of the Cricket Library podcast. And it's always good to hear from a cricket tragic, and you can hear the passion for the game in Tim's voice, and really enjoyed hearing his story and sharing it with you here on the Cricket Library podcast today. And if you enjoyed that chat, go back, have a listen in the back catalogue. Plenty of other great stories there, and a really interesting one coming up in the coming weeks. We'll be hearing from former Australian player, Baggy Green 377, Adam Dale. So make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you're keeping up to date with the latest at thecricketlibrary.com. And we look forward to your company again next time. This has been Matt Ellis for the Cricket Library podcast. Bye for now.